So, good morning. If you're new to our channel, welcome to our first ever Your Business World a Chat with. And we'd like to welcome today Ed Nell. So, Ed, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, it's brilliant. It's great having you on board. I'm a little bit nervous because let's face it, you do this professionally, and I'm a numpty with my pre-holiday haircut as well. So he's thinking, oh my God, looking at this, it's terrible.
To be fair, mine's gone like that as well. It's gone all wifty on the sides. I need it trimming, so it's gone a bit, and bouffant as well. Mine's just getting taller and taller.
Is it an age thing? I never used to have this when I was younger. Is it an age thing that happens? I mean, you'll get to my age eventually, but
I think we're very similar in age, to be honest. You're being very kind when you say that. But yeah,
no.
It probably is an age thing. I'm just glad it's still on my head, to be honest. So, whatever.
Me too. My brother's not as blessed as me, shall we say.
Okay.
and I let him know all the while. So anyway, before me and Ed go off on a tangent, thank you very much for watching this first ever a chat with basically with one of our members. The whole idea about this is just creating a conversation around topics that I get posed from time to time by our members, by the wider business public. And instead of us having an event with a speaker, we thought, well, let's adapt with new technology. Let's create something that's a general chat. It isn't scripted. Ed doesn't know what questions I may or may not ask him. We may put him on the spot from time to time. And also, I will do my best not to swear, which I have done it before, Ed. I did actually last 40 minutes on the radio without swearing once.
That's good going.
I was amazed. I went to the car park and swore lots after though. That's okay.
You've got to get them out at some point. You're right.
Absolutely. So the whole topic of today is around content creation, and just so people know, basically it's all triggered by a LinkedIn post last week where I actually had a member meeting. They were asking me about content creation, so I posted on LinkedIn about how I do it. You picked up on it and going, yeah, absolutely great. Would you like me to do a bit of a talk, but give some advice? And who am I to say no? So let's have some fun with this. Let's see where it goes. No idea where it may go, and go from there. So Ed, can you just give a quick rundown of what you do professionally? Because some people would have met you, some people may not have met you before. So can you basically just quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm I've been a radio presenter for the last 20 odd years now. It's kind of been my main career for much of my life, really. And really, radio is content creation. That's what you do every single day. So my daily routine is whatever time my show is, I tend to get in about an hour, maybe 2 hours before the show actually is broadcast and go, right, what are we going to do today? And either it's me working on my own or I'm working with a producer. And we have to think about where we're going to start and what we're going to do for that day. And unfortunately, over the time, I've come up with lots of systems. I've learned lots of techniques to help me do that, which makes the process so much easier. Because I get it. Some days you sit down and you go, right, I've got to create a LinkedIn post today. I'm not feeling very inspired. I can't think of anything. I'm sat looking at it going, there's nothing there. We've all been in that situation, but I think what we're going to talk about today, those kind of systems that I've always used on the radio with the BBC or in commercial radio on a variety of types of different formats and things, will be useful to you in terms of creating content and kind of having those systems in place. So even if you are feeling uninspired, you'll still be able to create something that will work for you and work for your ideal customer.
That's brilliant. That's exactly what we're looking for today. Tips, tricks, ideas, inspiration. Literally, like I say, we'll see where this goes. And obviously, I know I love some of your. I mean, I love that post. I mentioned when we had a brief chat about this with you, obviously in the buff with your love. I mean, that there thinking like, yeah, that was a great piece because people just laughed about it and things like this and created stories and that kind of area. So yeah, I'm excited about what's going to happen on this. So okay. I've got a couple of questions written down. I've only got a couple of bullet points. Literally, there are half a dozen bullet points, if that. So I'm going to ask you a quick question then. You mentioned there about obviously you've got systems and processes that you will do and go through that. The general public, what problems do they generally have when coming up with ideas for content?
I think the main issue for me is people don't think enough about who the content's for. And I think that can be a real issue. These are kind of one of the systems. I mean, like in radio, we're very specific about who we're talking to, and we're always very aware of who our audience is. Okay. And that's the starting point. So if you come up with an idea, you then have to go, right, will this work for my audience? how can I make sure that it works for them? What kind of language am I going to use to make sure I really connect with them? Actually, is this not something they think about? For example, if I want to talk about Strictly Come Dancing, how am I going to talk about that? Because, you know, if I'm on a BBC radio station, which I was just the other day, Strictly was on at the weekend. Can I talk about it on Monday morning? Well, some people may not have watched it. They might be on catch up. So you've got to think about that and go, I don't want to ruin it for them, because that will be a real turn off for them. It's just simple stuff like that of kind of thinking really about your audience. And if I am going to talk about it, am I going to make it really clear that I'm going to talk about who got voted off at the weekend? Yes, I probably will. So that they've at least got an opportunity to go, oh, I'm not listening for just a second.
So it's not just the audience, it's actually thinking about the processes they will go through and what I generally classify as peopling. So whenever I develop process, I mean, all this stuff on the board here is about you had an email yesterday about the events and things like that, and how that's all the work behind that. But all this is about how people react in today's environment and how people consume information and all this. I mean, even this, a couple of months ago, this would have been an evening event where you would have been presenting for 40 minutes, etc. So you actually got to think about how are people going to consume this, how are people working in a wider sphere with catch up and cutting out adverts and all that. So you have to go that deep into that kind of area. Is that right?
I think so. And I would urge anybody who's thinking about creating content for LinkedIn or whatever social media platform it is, spend some time first thinking about who your audience is. And when I say audience, I mean your ideal customer, the person that you really want to attract, but really get to know them. I mean, the kind of depth I go into, for example, when I was on commercial radio and I used to do the breakfast show on free radio across the West Midlands, we were talking to 1.3 million people every single day, potentially. You've got to know that audience and understand who they are. For one thing, it's a commercial radio station, so it sells advertising. The advertisers want to attract a certain audience. So I have to make sure everything else I do attracts that audience. And it's going into real depth of going, okay, so let's start with the demographic. Let's say 24-44 is our age band. Let's delve a little bit deeper down there. Let's go right down the middle, 32. Okay. Do we want to attract more men or women? Who do we tend to work with at the moment? Who do we get best results with? Let's go from there. Right. If we're going to go female, okay, right. Female 32-year-old. We already know a reasonable amount there. Let's give that person a name. So that way, this is kind of a filter that I'm building now. So any piece of content I create, I can go, for example, Sarah, who's 32. Where does she live? Let's say she lives in Bilston. What job does she do? Let's say she's a school teacher at a secondary school and she teaches English. From that, I already know how much she earns because I can look it up on the internet. So then I can work out what her disposable income is. If she's 32, she might be married. Yeah, we could think about that. She might have a family. She might have children. What does she watch on the telly? What car is she likely to drive? Where does she go on holiday? Where does she do her food shopping?
That so standard profiling, that avatar creating, that kind of thing in marketing speak. So basically, you, even with content on the radio, you go with that deep in terms of, okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
And this is the kind of what I mean when I say talking about the kind of language you would use. And that's the kind of depth that I would go to. For example, if I'm going to say, tell a story on the radio and maybe it involves, I don't know, something a little bit risque. How am I going to talk about that? I've got to be aware that Sarah, who's 32, is in the car. She may have her, say, 6-year-old daughter in the car with her. She's on the school run. If I say something that Sarah may be fine with, but she might think, I don't want my 6-year-old hearing that, she's going to steer away from the radio. And that's not going to be right. But if you then go, I'm aware that her daughter's in the car. If I talk about it in a way that Sarah will get it, but her daughter won't, she'll know what I'm saying without me actually saying certain words.
I got you. Okay.
It's that kind of panto thing, isn't it? That if you go to the panto, there are some jokes for the parents that the kids don't get. And there are lots of jokes for the kids that the parents, you know.
That was
and it's that cleverness of understanding the language that you're using and who you're speaking to. Now, I'm not suggesting that you would do that on LinkedIn because it's unlikely you're going to have a 6-year-old child viewing LinkedIn content. But it's just, again, knowing your audience to that extent where you go, I know exactly what they want and I know exactly how to deliver it.
Sure. So just in terms of that, so you mentioned there about stories. I mean, you've discussed this, we discussed this months and months and months ago when we first met, etc. So when we talking about compelling content, are we talking here about more storytelling is required? Because I know that's what I believe, but from a professional's perspective, do you think the same, or am I going down the wrong track in terms of that?
I completely agree. I mean, the thing is, I think when people think stories, they think a long form beginning, middle, and end story.
Yeah.
But actually, every piece of content we share is a story to a certain extent. Everyone is a storyteller, whether you believe it or not. And I think a lot of people think some people are born brilliant storytellers and some people aren't. But I believe you can become a brilliant storyteller. But some people, like anything, are born perhaps with a natural talent. Maybe they are natural storytellers. Without realizing it, they'll tell brilliant stories. Other people perhaps need a little bit more work to make sure that they can become a storyteller. But everything we do is a story. And I think understanding that and realizing that everything you do, every kind of post has to have a beginning, middle, and end, and make it into a story. Whether it's a 30-second video, whether it's a testimonial that you're sharing, whether it is a long form story or it's a picture, there needs to be some sort of story element to it, I think.
Okay, so there's a reason behind it then, effectively. So why are you telling this story? And what kind of thing, I mean, I know I'm probably preempting this, and this is the interviewers, you don't do this in certain areas. So my belief is that when people are looking to consume content, what they're not looking at is about you. What they're looking at is they're there for a reason, which is, if you understand the reason, say, I'm going to pick on LinkedIn again, because that's the medium I generally use, and people watching this are generally going to be business people, basically, so LinkedIn is what they're. The reason they're there is because they're looking to expose their brand, and they're looking to try and get engagement for them and everything else. So in reality, they're not really looking at adverts. They're not interested in adverts per se, but they do like absorbing knowledge that may be useful or interesting. Is that the kind of thing you talk about here? So in other words, talk about life and just talk about stuff rather than, oh, look at my latest product, look at my latest product, look at my...
Completely. Absolutely that. And I think that's it. I think these are part of the filters that you need to create. So firstly, understanding your audience or your ideal customer. Secondly, your why. Why are you sharing content? What do you want to achieve from sharing this piece of content? And it shouldn't be sell, because I think that's kind of almost the LinkedIn 101, isn't it? Of don't sell, inform, offer value. That's kind of the thing, isn't it, really? So what value can I offer? And why do I want to do it? Do I want to do it because I want to grow my authority in what I'm doing? Do I want to demonstrate my ability? Ultimately, we do want more customers, but it's kind of that sort of magnetic marketing, isn't it, of sharing value, and people get to that whole know, like, and want to get your product without necessarily being sold to, because that can be quite a turn off, I suppose.
So I mean, there's also a new book that's coming out today. Have you seen that one, Arnold Schwarzenegger? I think a brilliant title. Just be useful. That is such a great title off the back of going, just be useful. And if you're useful, people engage.
Yeah, completely. And those are, I think, once you've got those filters in place, it makes everything else a lot easier, because I think that's the thing. People have ideas for content, but quite often that little voice in your head will talk you out of it and going, no one's going to like this. It's going to be rubbish. Why would I put this on? And then before you've even thought about it, you haven't created the piece of content. You've spent probably 10 minutes going, why would anybody want that? And then you've done nothing, and it's gone.
Is that one of the problems then? Sorry to interrupt you there. Is that one of the problems that people are just scared about being judged by talking about something? Going, oh, will people like this or not like it? Or will they read it or not find it interesting? Will I have the keyboard warrior? Is this a genuine fear?
I think that's what people worry about. I know that's what I worry about. I mean, like, so many times on the radio, certainly early in my career, I'd have these ideas. We all have ideas. You note them down as you go along, because you never know when inspiration is going to hit you. And I'd urge you to do that as well, rather than sit down in front of a computer going, I've got to create some content now. Carry a little notebook or notes section on your phone. Ideas will hit you anytime, and just jot them down. And that's how I do it. And then when it comes to it, I can go, right, what do I come up with? Well, that actually is a rubbish idea. That one could make something out of, and let's go forward with that. But I think people do talk themselves out of it, definitely. But I think probably a lot of that is because you haven't done the basics of the why am I doing this and who is my audience. And I think once you go, actually, it ticks both those boxes. I kind of have to share this because it's important for my audience to see it. Then hopefully that's going to stop that little voice in your head going, this is really rubbish. But also there's that concern, isn't there, I think, with the metrics that we can get. And we get so much information and feedback now of how many likes did it get? How many comments did it get? How many shares? Then you look at sort of metrics that LinkedIn can provide, for example, as well. And you go, well, it's not, really giving my profile any visibility. And you go, well, that was a failure then, wasn't it? But was it? was it down to timing? Perhaps it may not have been, or perhaps you could have reworded that piece. Maybe it's not a bad idea. Perhaps just how you presented it needs a bit of refining. And actually, you could use that idea again, but perhaps let's do it differently next time. And maybe next time it will be a hit. You just never know. But I think that whole success and failure of, well, I got less than 10 likes or whatever, well, it was a failure. I just think you've kind of got to ignore that to a certain extent, and just, it's really hard, but you've just got to keep pushing on and be consistent.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great tip. It's the person concerned who actually started, or the reason I wrote that post was worried about that kind of thing. And one of the pieces of advice I gave is, look, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're talking something extremely emotive, you've got to be brave to go and do that. I mean, I remember I posted one about there was it in early part of the year, there was all the schools called snow days, and there was no snow, and I went, and I was like, right, I'm not having that. And then we had a load of teachers coming and going, and they go, oh, whoa, hang on. As teachers, you need to read the post. I'm not talking about you guys. I've got, with that much respect, I've got a lot of friends who are teachers, but I'm criticizing decision-making processes behind different things and how that impacts business. And what do we do as business owners to react to this when, let's face it, we all look at the weather forecast and go, what the heck are they on about?
Yeah, sure.
But we, as business owners, me and you, luckily my kids have grown up now. But if you've got a young family, your business has been put on hold because of that through something which you couldn't plan for. So it's all these kind of things. So okay, then. So here's another question for you. Then it's actually not on the pre-approved list either.
Ooh, okay.
So it's a case of. So you mentioned there about basically likes and measuring and things like that. How can people improve engagement, specifically on social media, from your perspective, or actually in any kind of area? How will people improve engagement, and how could they monitor it?
Yeah, this is the thing, and I feel you can get too caught up in this because I think people talk a lot about algorithms and, oh, I've worked out what the algorithm's doing at the moment. Well, you can't really, because as soon as you may have perhaps got an idea of how the algorithm works, they'll probably change it again, and what worked yesterday won't work today.
Does that drive you potty?
Insane.
The LinkedIn algorithm says this, and you have somebody else says the LinkedIn algorithm says that. I mean, my view, and this might be controversial, unless your job title is head of LinkedIn algorithm department, I don't believe you.
I'm the same. And you see these kind of clickbait adverts that come up all the time going, come to my workshop for $9.99 and I can tell you exactly how the algorithm works. I don't believe you. I don't think you can.
Yeah, so. I mean, but also in the algorithm department of LinkedIn, I reckon there's 1,000 people. And they don't know what everybody else is. What was that program I saw on Netflix? It was talking about how social media and some of the people internally, and some of it was the vice president of whichever, and he said, "Oh yeah, I headed up a team of 500 people doing this. What was your job at Facebook?" Oh, I was the one who created the thumbs up. I had a team of 500 people working on that's it. It's like
amazing.
Yeah. Unreal, absolutely unreal.
No, I think that's the thing. I think making sure that you're firstly consistent with it to try and grow an audience, but also delivering a variety of content as well. So, because I think we all have things that we're more comfortable doing than others. And I think when you come up with an idea, that idea you might go, okay, that could be a picture and I'll put it on LinkedIn. Great. But could it be other ways? Could you recycle that idea into other forms? Could you make it into a video? Could it be a long form story? Could it be a carousel? Could it be perhaps a testimonial that you shared in a way? And it's just different ways to keep that content, because we all like different types of content. Most people, I think, probably respond best to video. I think we kind of know that now. But it's also how you're going to deliver that video. Is that video going to be 90 seconds and really tight and powerful and power home the message? Or actually, is it going to be more relaxed and perhaps it's going to be a 3 or 4 minute video? Or are you going to do it? Some people have a bit of time and they want to read a long form story. And Brett, I know you love writing long form stories, and I think you do it brilliantly. And I think they're a really good way to hook people in. So that's another way of doing it. But I think it's just being aware of all the different types of content you can do, using those in a variety of ways, but being consistent with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's your view then in terms of creating conversation? through, I mean, I know I talk a lot about this, is that if you're putting a post on there, create conversations off the back of it. What's your view on that?
I think it's really good. And I think, again, it's a great way to get your content shared to other people. We all know how it works, that if somebody comments on your post, then their audience will see that they've commented on your post. It tends to pop up in their feed. So then you're exposed to potentially another 500 or 1,000 connections that they have. So there'll be an overlap of some of them will be common connections. But then there'll be other people going, oh, who's this guy? And they might see your LinkedIn headline next to your name, the original post, and go, he seems quite interesting. I'll click on there. And we all get those random, why is this person looking at my profile? Who are they? Oh, they've probably just seen a piece of content that one of their connections has reacted to. So creating conversation is really valuable for sharing our profile and getting visibility. And how you do that, again, I think comes back to your audience. I think, we've talked before about the good and the bad of social media, and good posts that work really well and bad ones. Bad posts can actually get loads of interaction. But is it the right interaction for you? I mean, I think, again, it comes back to your audience. And I've seen people who will talk about politics on LinkedIn. And I kind of go, and it does get lots of reaction. A lot of people get very angry. A lot of people will agree. You'll create conversation. You'll get loads of great metrics off the back of it. Has it served your purpose, though, of what your why is? And is it right for your audience? Actually, in the long run, have you alienated a lot of audience because they've gone, well, he believes in that, I really don't, we can't do business. So again, you've got to be really careful of who your audience is and what you want to achieve in the first place. It may create reaction and interaction, but does that really serve your purpose?
Some great points there. Great point. So last couple of things then, because I'm conscious that, oh, by the way, the reason I write long form is because I can't write short form.
Is that right?
Why use 3 words when 47 will do?
Well, I was going to say, actually, I really like your stories, because to me, and I don't know if you think about this or how you write them, but it has every ingredient of how I've been taught how to tell a really impactful story. And let me just sort of share that the kind of ideas, and this is when I come up with an idea, I always put it in this format because it works really well. And every story, we all know, needs a beginning, middle, and end. But to be a bit deeper than that, an American radio consultant taught me this good few years ago, and I've kind of lived my career by it since then, of use a trigger lead in, dazzling detail, and a power out. That makes your story so much more powerful. So your trigger lead in is a really powerful statement that is going to grab somebody straight away. And the newspapers do it all the time with the headlines that they create. For example, in the Sun, something with a pun probably is what they'll go with. Dazzling detail will be, take them on a journey, make the reader experience everything you have in that story. So they see it, they smell it, they hear it, they can feel it, they can see what you've seen. And then your power out is how you're going to finish the story. It might be a call to action. It might just be that you're repeating your trigger lead in, but it's some way where the story, it's the destination. People love the journey as much as they love the destination. And I think taking them on that journey and then revealing what the destination is. And I think you do that brilliantly in your long form posts. As I say, I don't know how much thought you put into them, but naturally it may be the thing you do.
If I'm honest, I've never been trained. I speak about from my audience's perspective that, okay, you're one of our members, but most of our members are small business owners. Yes, we've got some very large companies, we've got multi-million-pound companies in there, but the majority of our members are small business owners, perhaps a couple of staff, it's owner-operated, that kind of level. And that's fine. There's lots of people out there. I love working at that end of the spectrum because I'm making a difference to people's lives. And that's what I love. But I find they get far, far, far too close to it. So I try to talk about general life, conversations, things I've seen, different things, and then try to put a businessy spin on it of going, well, actually, this here, how many people walk around with, this is the post, was it last Monday, where I put the post on. I was actually in Webb's Garden Centre in Droitwich, and there was this lovely lady with a trail of toilet roll out of her trousers.
Oh, I saw that, yes.
Yeah. And I know Webb's Garden Centre, and I may being always looking in the trolley. She was with the family because they were all standing side by side. There was a trolley with some plants in. Now, the toilets are the opposite side to where the garden part is. So this lady's going to have to have walked all the way through the store. She was holding some other things, and nobody in her family, she must have been walking around like that for half an hour
Yeah.
at least, and nobody in there, and he was reasonably busy, has actually had the audacity, or actually the bravery to go, excuse me, love, you might want to check your backside.
Yeah.
Which is what I did. And then the look on her husband's face was, oh my God, I'm going to punch him in the, like, and he's just like, yeah, it's just like, oh, don't blame me. I mean, your family's been horrible to you. I mean, am I the only person who's actually noticed? And she's like, oh my God. But nobody had done it. But how many times in our business lives do we not look at the opportunities in front of us, where conversation starters are, where there's a sign? So I just use that as an example, a real world example. Admittedly, in garden centre, yes, I burst out laughing. My wife was wondering what the heck is going on. I then took a photo, and then I went and told her, because let's face it, I can't do it that order, haven't I? Okay, so there's no other way. But I'm just
Absolutely got to be done.
Genuinely try to use the day-to-day goings on of my world to hopefully give a bit of inspiration and get that thinking. And if I can just help one person with that post, going, oh, I never thought of that, or oh, that's a good one, I'm happy with that. And yes,
it's a really relatable piece of content, that. And we always say in radio, we always say life's a link. Because obviously a link is a bit between the songs. Making it relatable, and a relatable post like that is memorable. It's a connection with your audience. People go, oh my goodness, but yeah, I've seen something similar to that, or I've had that kind of experience happen to me. And it's a connection. You've connected them with your audience, and they've gone, yeah, brilliant. But then you've also gone on to add value to it as well. There's a kind of almost a lesson a little bit there, which is great. So that's a great piece of content.
And the other thing as well, which I personally notice, is that everybody keeps trying to talk about positive or what. Well, we don't live in that world. Sometimes there are negative things as well. So approach it. Approach these hard subjects. And I'm not going to go into politics or religion. It's one of those things. I mean, crikey, it's one of those. I don't know if I'm going to heaven or hell, but I know when I get there, they go, "Oh my God, he's here." It's one of those. It'll happen at some point. So anyway, last couple of things. The one question I do want to ask you, and I know this is asked to me a lot, but I'd love to have your perspective. Are there any good tools that people can use for inspiration, or anything that can actually help them create the content?
The one that I'm using a lot at the moment is, and I'm sure you've probably done the same, Chat GPT is brilliant. Okay. If you've gone, okay, right, for example, I think the classic is 5 tips on a service that you offer to give people advice. For example, right, okay, if I'm talking storytelling, and I talk about storytelling a lot with the Media Insiders, because I believe that is the basics of most pieces of content. Okay, 5 tips to make you a better storyteller. If I'm short on inspiration, I might ask Chat GPT and it's how you ask them, with that kind of prompt, and refining that prompt a few times of going, give me 5 tips in a conversational style about storytelling and ways that I could be better at it, or something like that. I mean, that might be my starting point. It'll come up with 5 tips. I will certainly won't lift them word for word. I would not advise you do that, but that is my jumping off point. Then it's created some conversation for me, and I would go, okay, so where do I go with that? Okay, it's talked about make sure you have a strong start. Yeah, that's a really good thing, actually. So let's talk about ways that we could create a strong start for our story, so we're going to really grab our audience right from the off and make them care. Brilliant. I can do a post on that. I would urge you to do the same as well. It's such a great tool, and I think we've only really just scratched the surface of what it can do, but it's a great way to get inspiration if you are struggling, I think.
Great example of using Chat GPT as a inspirational tool rather than just a writing tool. I agree with that. I mean, using AI just as a writing tool, I'm not the biggest fan of it personally. I can see the pros and cons, but as a way of getting inspiration, I think that's a great idea. A great idea there. So last couple of things then. Right, I'm going to put you on the spot. I would like to ask you, what's the best piece of content you've ever seen?
Wow. Okay, that's a big one, isn't it?
And it's politically incorrect. We won't tell anybody in the BBC, so your career will be safe.
Well, I would say actually a video that's really stayed with me probably for the last 6 months was a content creator who she runs her own PR company. And to be honest, it's really bad. Maybe it's not that great because I can't remember her name. But I've now used this as an idea. I don't claim credit for it because it's not my idea, but she said, look, if you're struggling for content, The really obvious way to start is frequently asked questions. What are the top 20 frequently asked questions that you get about your business?
Okay.
Right. Why don't you record yourself answering those 20 frequently asked questions, then chop them all up? You have 20 pieces of video content that you can share. You could put one on per week, and then actually you can then reuse them again, couldn't you? Because once you do a piece of content, you should always reuse it. You've put loads of work into it. Thinking the idea is that you put it on and then it's gone would be ridiculous. And I was like, this is obvious stuff, but it really hit home to me. And I just thought, what a great message. And she did all that in about 90 seconds. And I went, it's clear, it's a great message. I can do that right now. And then I've got 20 pieces of content. Brilliant. Great.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, let's face it, if you can repurpose content all the while, that's a great thing to do. It's well, let's face it, that's what we're going to be doing with this chat. It's a case that because, by the way, if anybody's got any comments, any questions they would like to ask Ed, please feel free to put in the comments. We're going to put links all over LinkedIn and things like that. Yes, we're going to do that. We're going to fleet out, and feel free to ask Ed any questions you like, or me. And we'll make sure Ed gets those questions, and we'll make sure everything feeds back. And let's face it, that could keep our content going for 4 months.
Oh, easy.
Oh, and if you've got any really awkward questions, that'd be even better. That'd be a really good one, right? So, in terms of awkward stuff, what's the worst piece of content you've seen then?
Worst piece of content, I think, would probably be something involving religion and politics, which I just think is a real turnoff. But people, as I say, you'll get interaction. But it's just the classic one. We always joke about this on the radio of, you will get interaction if you say, what's your favorite biscuit? And it's the classic local radio topic. The other one, if you want to be a little bit darker with it, what's the best religion? And you kind of go, ooh, that's going to kick off big style, isn't it? If you want to end your career on the radio quite quickly, go on and say, so, I'd be really interested if you text in, what do you think's the best religion? You're going to be in obviously a lot of trouble, but also you will get interaction. And some people, if you just care about the interaction, go something like that. Route one, the whole, what's your favorite biscuit? Because you will get interaction on that.
Oh God, yeah.
But will it serve your purpose? Will it grow your audience in the right way? If you want to grow your authority with what other service or product you're offering, that's not going to do it. It'll get great interaction. Your metrics will look brilliant, but come on, it doesn't serve your purpose.
Absolutely. I love all those. Once again, LinkedIn. I love all those polls on LinkedIn. Absolutely freaking useless.
Oh yeah.
But the amount of interaction you get as a bit of an ego stroking. Look at that! I've had 1,000 views on this thing in 3 hours. And it's just like, there's no point.
Well, that's it. And I think polls can be great, but I think it's the question you ask with it and what you are again hoping to achieve off it as well.
Yeah.
If it is purely an ego thing, as you say, you can get some great ego points off that if you just ask a simple question.
What was the last one I did? Oh, well, let's say, I like to have a laugh and I'll push the boundaries and things like this. And I just did one so people just take the mickey out of me, left, right. And in other words, here you go. Here's free reign on a Friday. Just people are down. The weather was horrible. And he was just like, you know what? Just take the mickey out of it. He was about Crocs, saying, look, I'm thinking about buying some Crocs. Should I or not? And he literally was, yes, you'll never regret it. No, don't go there. And the third one was, you're just dead to me. Off that, it was just great. And just you could see the people who know me know why I did it. It just lifted people's spirits. It's just like
exactly, and that's a nice thing as well, isn't it? It's a fun post, and I suppose I've talked a lot about making sure your message counts and your why and everything like that. But if you just want to have a bit of fun, again, it demonstrates your personality, doesn't it, as well?
Absolutely.
And are you somebody I could do business with? Well, you like a laugh. So actually that does help, doesn't it? That does relate to your why. So that is important, just as important as those really impactful posts as well.
So I'm going to ask the last question now, or not about. I want you to tell us a little bit. Obviously, I've done some research behind the scenes. I know that you run Media Insiders. And I want to give you the opportunity to give a little bit of a plug on that. So can you explain some of the great work that you're doing with Media Insiders at the moment? Because I know you mentioned a few things before we actually started recording this.
Yeah, so I mean, really, content is the main thing for us, and I think we've talked about this a lot today about how people struggle to get started with content, and teaching people, and really, it's the techniques that I've learned through radio as well. They transfer because it's radio's content creation at the end of the day, and teaching people through one-to-one coaching and workshops are the biggest thing. I wouldn't claim to be a LinkedIn expert. However, I can tell you how to create great content that will be engaging with an audience, whether it's on LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, whatever. But again, you've got to you'll use the same techniques, but you will tailor it to your platform at the same time. So it's sort of understanding that. And storytelling is a big part of that. So I work a lot with people. I was working with a client recently who came to me and said, look, I'd like some coverage in the media. And that's a big part of what I do as well, because having worked in the media, again, I don't come at it from a PR and marketing point of view. I come at it as a point of view of what am I looking for that will get you coverage? So I take them right through the whole process of how do you write a press release that's actually going to get read? Because I get sent so many. If you don't engage me straight away, I'm probably going to move on to the next one, if I'm being blunt about it. Then how do you prepare for an interview to make sure you get the most out of it? I know plenty of people who have built their businesses through free media appearances because they've grown their authority through doing that. And anybody could be the same because there's so much opportunity out there. You might think the media is a bit of a closed shop, but they're always looking for content. They're desperate for content. And you could be that go-to expert who, when they want to talk about something and they go, oh, well, they're a specialist in that. Let's get them on.
But Martin Lewis was the epitome of that when he built a business on it.
Exactly.
Very, very wealthy man off the back of it. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people think you can't advertise on the BBC, and to a certain extent you can't. However, you can talk about your business if you're adding value at the same time to the audience. And so many people I know have done that. A great property expert who was probably one of the first people I interviewed on the BBC. I said to her, look, okay, so what's happening with the property market in the next 12 months? Really interesting question. So again, she stroked my ego straight away, which is a great way to answer a question. I've just written a blog at this at propertyexpert.co.uk, but I'll tell you, so already she's spoken about her business and then she's now added some value to it as well. To me, that's kind of your perfect answer. But I think a lot of people, you get caught up when you do an interview once you've secured it and go, oh, that went so well. It was brilliant. But did you mention your business? Oh, I forgot to actually. Did you mention your website? No, I didn't. Did you mention what you do? No, I don't think I did. Well, how do you think it went now? Not so good. Not so good.
I mean, from your perspective, from a professional's perspective on the radio, do you almost feel like a bit of a sign of appreciation that you go, this person knows what they're doing. They've clearly done this before.
Oh, totally. And it is very much when they answer that first question, I kind of go, you know what you're doing here. Yeah, you know the system. You know how it works. You're going to be a great guest. And it helps me as well because then I relax as the interviewer going, I've got a safe pair of hands here as a guest, so I've got no worries.
Yeah, we used to have in the sporting arena, we used to play hockey, and you come across someone who's very, very good, and sometimes you go, oh, they're good. I don't know whether just stand and admire you or make sure they walk back on this pitch again.
Exactly. So that's kind of one of the big things I do is prepping people so that they can then leverage the media to build their brand. And also create podcasts for people as well. Podcasts are a great way to get your message out there. I think people always talk about generating huge audiences for podcasts, and then you can monetize it. That is true. That is one element. But I think it's also a great way, again, to demonstrate your ability through a business podcast about your business. It can also be a lead generator. And then it's also a piece of content to share on social media. So it has multiple uses, really.
Yeah, I mean, actually, just in terms, I was expecting to start talking about podcasts, but that's something I've been hearing a lot about lately with people looking more towards podcasts than video. I mean, we're creating video. I'm not as interested in the podcast arena myself because I don't really consume information via podcasts. So I watch a lot of video. That's how I consume basically information myself. So is podcasting on the rise again? Because I always felt like it went really, really manic for a while, then dipped off again. Is it back on that rise, or has it always been on that rise?
It's very much I think it was a big one when it first came on. It was kind of like the Wild West, that it wasn't regulated. People were like, "Way, we can do so much," and a lot of the early adopters have made ridiculous amounts of money out of it. I mean, you look at people like Joe Rogan, who has created a multi-million, probably multi-billion-pound business through podcasts, and he does a huge amount of numbers. And then you kind of look at people like, Harry and Meghan, of course, had signed a massive deal with, was it Spotify? I think it was, for podcasts. Those podcasts never actually got delivered in the end, but there was a lot of money associated to that. Then you look at, say, a very famous one, My Dad Wrote a Porno, is one podcast, and they've then done live shows off the back of that, where people will come to a theatre and watch them do the podcast live, and they'll pay tickets, buy tickets for that as well. So that's created something. And I think it was boom time, a little bit like a sort of the dot-com back in the 90s.
Okay.
That bubble hasn't burst, because I think it's slowed down a little bit, but I think very much it's still on the rise. I think there's some strange stat that I think a lot of people start a podcast, but they don't get past episode 3. I think there's something like 70% of people don't get past episode 3 when they're recording a podcast. But again, it is a great way to get your message out there. And we've already talked about this, about how you consume information. You mentioned you like video best. Some people like video. Actually, for podcasts, it's a great way to go, I can do other things while I'm listening to this. I could have it on the car while I'm going somewhere. While I'm perhaps cleaning the kitchen, I could have a podcast on or something like that. So it's just another way to share your message and get it out there. And it's a variety on the content that you may already be using.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Well, at that point, then, we'll bring that to a close. Ed,
good stuff.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for the information off there. Hopefully, those who the 4 people who may actually watch this video, hopefully they found it useful and some good tips off the back of it. We'll make sure we'll put links to the media insiders and the stuff in your profile, etc. We'll make sure that's all in the comments and in the chat and all that kind of thing. Whatever you're supposed to do on YouTube these days, we'll copy it and do it that way. And obviously, standard YouTube, obviously fashion. If you like this kind of medium, if you like this kind of information, obviously do us the favour. Subscribe to the channel, click the bell icon, all that usual stuff you're supposed to do, because we have got plans for a lot more of these. We're looking to do at least one a month, perhaps one. If people start liking them, we'll do more. But also, if you've got topics you would like us to cover, put it in the comments and we'll get experts on that particular topic. So thank you very much for watching. Ed, thanks again for your time. And yeah.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Thanks, then. Bye-bye.